It's the beginning of another month and autumn is fast approaching. There's 13 games and a humble original to review. And like last month, classic and premium subs get access to all 12 games. There's no time to waste, so I'll share my thoughts on the bundle right now. This month's humble original, Alt 254, really intrigued me. It's a pixelated open world adventure set on a 21x26 grid. I quite like the minimalistic art style and spent most of the time on the first level. I asked Chris from Bombchu for some tips and he told me I could interact by pressing space. Eventually I got through but had a lack of motivation. Somehow I defeated an enemy by randomly dashing, but I eventually drowned a few times and had spent enough time with the game. I tried dashing across the water, but my PC sticky keyed and I had got enough of the gameplay. It's also worth noting that the game's appearance in this month's choice coincides with a Steam release, and at present there are no tutorials or walkthroughs. Aside from the cool minimalistic visual style, which I enjoyed, I won't play this puzzle game anytime soon. Forager is a 2D crafting game with a cute pixel style. It's a game that I've had on my radar for a while now, and was delighted when it appeared in this month's lineup. The premise of Forager is simple. Collect resources, craft new resources, and repeat those steps. It's certainly repetitive, but that's the idea of the game. If you're looking for a heavy, story-based experience, then this one won't be for you. In terms of goals, the game is completely open-ended, and it was up for me on what I should do. I was instructed to build a furnace and a forge, and then had complete choice on what could happen next. I was aiming towards building a shovel, so worked towards that, but I ran out of iron. I also decided to make a fish trap, which is my main source of food, and yes, you do need to eat in this game. In terms of visuals, Forager looks great and oozes charm. The pixel sprites all work well together to create a simple, colourful aesthetic. In games with a pixel style, I've often found it hard to distinguish between different objects, but Forager succeeds in making everything clear to see. The music is also really good and offers a chill vibe. The gameplay of Forager is light and doesn't require too much attention, so when I return, and I will be returning to this, I'll be playing with the game muted and a video or podcast on my secondary monitor. The muting of the game is no discredit to the music, but this is a type of game I'd play with something else in the background. Forager also features tons of support from the solo developer, with recent updates including official mod support and upcoming multiplayer. Just scrolling down the Steam announcement page, it's clear to see how much work has been put into the game. I'm excited to see what else will come to Forager, and seeing a developer listening to the feedback of the community is great. With a podcast in the background, I can see myself spending a lot of time in this game, and as I've only scratched the surface, I can't wait to see what else Forager holds. Golf with friends is exactly that, mini golf with friends. I played this with some members of the Bombchu community and had so much fun. I really don't think I can describe this game in much detail. It's a simple premise: find some friends, some courses, and get ready for some laughs, because with the right group of people, a simple game of mini golf can provide many hilarious moments. Austin from Bombchu hosted a game and downloaded some courses from the Steam Workshop. We hopped in fairly effortlessly, and like a standard game of mini golf, we competed in getting the lowest score. We had golf ball collision enabled, so there were some funny moments where the players' balls were booted off course. Although an out of bounds is usually a major problem in golf, I actually found myself landing on a different course where I could try and putt the ball in that newly landed course instead. Golf with friends was a lot of fun. I do think a lot of the humour comes from the people you play with, but I got a lot of enjoyment. Steam Workshop support allows some cool and unique levels to be installed, and I'll definitely be taking part in further games. Strange Brigade is an action-adventure game with optional co-op. I'd heard mixed things about this game, but the game I experienced was incredible. I played the first campaign mission with a friend, which introduces the core controls and then throws you into the action. The game is over-the-top 1930s action, with a classic English gentleman narrating the entire experience, including the menus. The gameplay is mostly horde-based, with ancient mummies acting as the enemy. Combat here is excellent, and environmental traps can be used alongside the usual guns and melee. The inclusion of traps here really made the game stand out. My friend and I worked together, guiding enemies straight into spikes and swinging blades. Alongside combat, some light puzzle sections are also present. These puzzles aren't anything too noteworthy, but they get the job done. mostly matching up hieroglyphs. Visually, Strange Brigade looks fantastic at Ultra, with a nice high frame rate and no performance issues or glitches. The exotic environments pop with colour, and some nice explosive particle effects really highlight the action. According to How Long to Beat, the main campaign takes around 7.5 hours to complete. A campaign of that size is exactly what I've been looking forward to, and I'll definitely see this one through, either alone or with friends. Continuing with the ball-based games in this bundle, Lethal League Blaze is a competitive multiplayer sports game. Although I've written sports in this script, I suppose it could also be described as a fighter. Basically, each player or team is assigned a colour, and when a ball is in possession, it changes colour to represent the team. The ball can then be hit to damage the enemies, eventually making them fall off the stage, Super Smash Bros style. It took me a while to get a grasp of the mechanics, which I'm sure you can tell from the on-screen footage, but once I knew roughly what I was doing, I had a lot of fun. The game is very fast-paced, and it's easy to drift off and lose sight of the ball. The game wants, and ultimately deserves your attention. This sports-based gameplay is great, but what stood out to me is the awesome visual style and soundtrack. It's got a cel-shaded look where the colours really pop. Additionally, the upbeat music really helps assist the momentum of the gameplay. There's quite a roster of characters to choose from, which offer some unique twists on the core gameplay mechanics. I mostly played as Switch, a skateboarding robot who could wall ride, but I could have chosen a mechanical crocodile among the other inventive characters. In my half an hour, I played the tutorial and quite a few online multiplayer games, again with some friends at BombChew. The game also features a story mode, which I'm sure I'll check out. Generation Zero is an open-world survival game developed by Avalanche Studios, the same team behind Just Cause 3. I played this one alone, although the experience is aimed towards multiple players. I started the game by creating a character from a very limited choice of options, and the customization appears to be cosmetic. Then, after some scrolling text exposition, I was into the game. Sweden has developed some robots to protect the borders, and on your return from an island, these robots have taken a sinister turn. First of all, the graphics are really good, and several moments looked extremely realistic. I played a few of the missions, and several collectible documents explain some of the story. In between locations, and in fact in some of the locations, robots wander the world. These detected me really easily from afar, and were very hard to beat in single player. Eventually, after some planning, I took them down, but if I play again, I'll lower the difficulty. The atmosphere of the Swedish countryside is great, and the silence and lack of humans is deafening. As it's a survival game, new weapons are discovered and ammo must be carefully conserved. Fortunately, hunger isn't present in this game, so I'm extremely happy that there's no hunting or food management. Aside from the outstanding graphics, the core gameplay is okay. Just because a game has fantastic graphics doesn't mean the game is good, and I was left disappointed with Generation Zero. Granted, I play this one alone, but unless someone asks me if I'll join them with Generation Zero, I think Strange Brigade is a significantly better multiplayer option this month. Yooka Laylee and the Impossible Lair is great. Well, aside from that, it's a 2D platformer spin-off from the Yooka Laylee 3D platformer. The game is developed by the team behind Donkey Kong Country, a game which I have very fond memories of. Although not a perfect game, I was a fan of the original and liked the googly-eyed character design and classic-inspired colourful platforming. I was looking forward to the Impossible Lair when it was announced, and never picked it up. A few months after the launch, it was a free game on Epic Games, and though it's been sitting in my library, I didn't spend much time at all with it. I'm glad this game was in the choice, as finally sitting down to play, it was an absolute blast. Capital B is up to mischief, and with as many B-related puns you can think of, it's up to you to stop him. I actually got to try the titular Impossible Lair at the beginning of the game, and didn't go very far at all. You're swooped up by Queen Bee and arrive in a 3D overworld. The eventual goal of the game is to complete the Impossible Lair, but it's incredibly hard without help. To get help, levels in the overworld must be completed to grow your B-tallion. The game's pun, not mine. With each level completed, an extra life is granted for the final level. The Impossible Lair can be completed whenever you want. If you really wanted to, you could actually win the game by starting the Impossible Lair as soon as the game starts. Of course, it's a mighty challenge, so I opted to get the Bs. The gameplay in Yooka Laylee is a masterpiece in platforming, with responsive controls and excellent looking environments. Littered across the stage are quills which can be spent on tonics, which are basically modifiers for the game. The levels also feature many hidden paths, which lead to coins, which can be spent to progress through the overworld. Grant Kirkhope, who did the music for many classic platformers, also did it for this game, which makes the soundtrack so good. The Impossible Lair is an awesome platformer for both fans of Yooka Laylee or newcomers to the series. If you were disappointed by the original game, then I can still highly recommend checking this one out. Even though I've only played 30 minutes, it's one of the best platformers I've played, and I love these sorts of games. The Occupation is a first-person detective game with a unique twist. It's set during real time. A minute spent playing this game is an in-game minute. The game begins with a prologue of sorts concerning the creation of the Union Act. Aside from that, I'm not entirely sure of the exact character relations involved, as I've only played 30 minutes, but I'm sure I'll learn more about the game as I play more. Presumably, some detectivery will go into play, and which will involve looking for clues and interviewing people who know about a key story event explored at the end of the prologue. Unfortunately, I haven't got to these parts yet, but the prologue has been fun to play, making me sneak around and download key data. Furthermore, the real timeness of the game hasn't been fully explored yet, but early signs have started to show. There's a profound sense of slowness in the actions. Using in-game programs takes time to load, and pushing objects such as barges takes quite a bit of time. Personally, I like this mechanic, and it really accentuates the real timeness of the game, but I can see it being boring for others. One thing I should note is that this game rarely saves. I had to wait until the end of the first chapter, which took me about 30 minutes until it saved. There's no way to save upon exit, which is really disappointing, so make sure you've got time before you start. Overall though, The Occupation has interested me, and has thus been wishlisted since launch, so I was delighted to finally play. I'm looking forward to discovering more of the mechanics and story. Catherine Classic is a mature puzzler from Japanese developer Atlas. I'll be honest in that I was hesitant to review this. The logo from the Humble Choice game made me think this is going to be an extremely not safe for work game. After being told by a friend on Discord to approach this game with an open mind, I started the game and wasn't sure what to expect. What I discovered was block pushing puzzles, which reminded me of an older game called Pool Blocks on the 3DS. The puzzling mechanics of Catherine were really fun. By manipulating the position of blocks, the goal is to reach the top of the towering nightmare. In between puzzles, there's a variety of anime cutscenes and dialogue choices revolving around the core theme of love and relationships. This type of game isn't for me, but the puzzles are fun and the story seems to be pretty original so far. Visually, there's some wild stuff featured, and if this style of game looks interesting, I'm sure you'll have fun. I enjoyed my time, but won't return. Vampire the Masquerade, Coteries of New York is a visual novel set in the Vampire Masquerade universe. Similar to Catherine, it's a style of game I don't usually play, but I approached it with an open mind. I began by choosing a character from a group of 3. I chose Lamar, an artist. I'm sure it will come as no spoiler that very quickly in the game I was transformed into a vampire. The game takes place in modern day New York, which reminded me of What We Do in the Shadows. It's interesting seeing the vampire clans interacting with the modern day environments. The writing in here is great and has a good balance between detail and action. Likewise, I also enjoyed the art in this one. Environments and characters feature a nice painted style. There's other games in the bundle that I want to return to, so Vampire the Masquerade Coteries of New York will be uninstalled. For fans of visual novels, no matter if you've played games from the universe or not, Coteries of New York appears to be a good visual novel to sink some teeth into. And yes, I did steal that pun from last month's Vampire review. The Shapeshifting Detective is a game from the full motion video genre. I enjoyed playing/watching The Late Shift from a previous Humble Monthly, which was developed by the same people behind this one. The Shapeshifting Detective is like a choose your own adventure, but with real actors. This technique does cause some awkward cuts and pauses between choosing dialogue, but I think this is unavoidable. For me, Late Shift flowed a lot better, but featured less choices. In terms of the narrative, you arrive at a mysterious town called August, and must ask questions to find out who murdered a popular violinist. In terms of filmmaking, there's nothing particularly noteworthy about the cinematography. The first-person review definitely creates constraints in what can be achieved, but the majority of the scenes involve a straightforward camera angle looking directly at the person in question. There's also a level of randomness in this game, where the murderer changes on each playthrough. It's a cool feature, which means that it's impossible to have the killer spoiled, but I can't see myself replaying the game. The acting so far has been pretty good, with the characters all giving off a sense of abnormality and intrigue. There's something odd about this town. and it's up to the player to discover what it is. Dialogue offers a few different choices and new conversation options open up when more information is found. Ultimately, the discussion is fairly standard and nothing has particularly stood out to me. Recently I've been watching a lot of Christopher Nolan's work, so perhaps my expectation when it comes to film has been pretty high as of late. Nevertheless, the mysterious and slightly sinister mood isn't working for me, and whilst I appreciate that the game is trying something unique in the sheer amount of options available, this isn't one I'm eager to return to. Evoland Legendary Edition is a collection of the 2 games from the Evoland series. I have some experience of this series and played just under 8 hours of the game 2 years ago. I was interested in playing the first one and enjoyed the introduction. It's hard to describe these games, as the point of the series is that it combines a variety of genres together. Essentially though, throughout both games, the visual styles will change. For example, both games start with a very low bit design and eventually progress into some visual styles and gameplay genres from across the years that I won't spoil. Both games feature some funny references and homages to other classic games and pop culture for both the visuals and dialogue. I remember stopping the game last time as I was using a really low powered gaming tablet for portable play and Steam was just dreadfully slow. Despite this, me not playing the game until 2 years later for review purposes shows I haven't been too eager to return. The game features some inventive ideas and game mechanics, but with Evoland 2 reportedly taking 17.5 hours to complete, I found other games that I prefer to spend some time with. If you're looking for an inventive RPG adventure, then Evoland 2 has great reviews and a lot of content. The original also has positive reviews on Steam, with a much shorter time to beat. I'd recommend at least trying out these original games, even if you don't spend too long with them. Fun with Ragdolls sure has Ragdolls, but the fun is missing. I approach every game with an open mind and always try to look for what audience will enjoy the game, but I just cannot understand how this game appeals to anyone. There's a tutorial where you're screamed orders, and to be honest, I enjoyed this opening narration, but then the game begins and I was just shocked at how this game has 92% positive reviews. I started by playing the sandbox, where different shapes and contraptions can be placed. Contraptions are placed whilst also controlling the ragdoll, so it's hard to be precise when placing machines such as seesaws. I made a quick Fall Guys level with seesaws and spinning hammers. When I fell over, there was no way for me to stand back up, so it's a complete reset from the last checkpoint. I wasn't impressed by the sandbox, but tried out some of the popular workshop levels others have made. I played a version of Fall Guys which just made me want to play Fall Guys, and then, with the requests from stream viewers, played Fun with Ragdolls version of Five Nights at Freddy's 4. I'll let the footage do the work here. I haven't played Gmod in years, but I can definitely say that Gmod does this game much better. Now I think about it, Fun with Ragdolls is inspired by a popular YouTube series, so maybe fans of that series recommend it, as they had an existing fondness of the franchise. I appreciate the game is developed by a single dev, and a lot of effort and work must have gone in. For a Ragdoll sandbox game, the essentials work, you can use Ragdolls in a sandbox, and the positive reviews show how many people enjoy it. For outsiders of the YouTube series, I think there's better alternatives, and Fun with Ragdolls certainly didn't impress me, and I'm sure it will be the same for others. Despite the lack of a big AAA title, this month's lineup has really impressed me. Forager, Golf with Friends, Strange Brigade, and The Occupation have all been on my wishlist for a while. Both Yooka Laylee and The Impossible Lair and Lethal League Plays were a lot of fun to play, and even though the other games weren't for me, the value still holds up. This month's bundle includes all 12 choices for classic and premium subs, so there's no need to drop anything. When you consider that the lowest ever price of Forager alone is the same price as a bundle, it's hard to complain. Thanks to Double Chris for their Patreon support. After a break since March, I'll be returning to school on Monday, so the next couple of reviews will most likely take a few more days to release. Thanks for watching until the end, and I'll see you next month.